So it's a very good morning from London. Good evening, Linley, because you're in New Zealand.
Yes, 9 p.m.
Yes, 9 p.m. in New Zealand. Linley, I'm really delighted to welcome you on this LinkedIn Live. It's your first LinkedIn Live.
It is.
You told me about it just before we went on air, and you're a very special person for me. And people might wonder why she invited Linley Rose on her LinkedIn Live. Well, I should say that about 16 years ago, I was invited by my head teacher to go to New Zealand to look at best practice in schools around New Zealand, and we were introduced by Barbara Prashnig. And you, at that point, you had a coaching business, and we started coaching together. You became my coach, and you have been my coach for a number of years when I was an assistant head, a deputy head, and a head teacher. And you have been a master certified coach, so an MCC from the ICF. You are a passionate, effective, efficient coach working with leaders and high achievers. And you've been a coach for about 20 years. And 16 of those I've known you. So I feel very, very privileged. And I know that it's working, because I would never have been where I am now had you not coached me, I have to say. Because you've asked me some amazing questions in our discussions. And one of them was, and what opportunity is that giving you, Nadine? And I remember that when you asked me that question first, when I was very frustrated because things were not going the way I wanted them to go, I was quite frustrated by that question. And now I'm thinking, this is such a wonderful question. So thank you, Linley, for being here today and for spending a little time with me on this early morning LinkedIn Live. So, Linley, is there anything else that you would like to share with us about yourself?
Oh, thank you. Well, yes, 20 years coaching, been an MCC, ICF MCC coach since 2008, and I've just renewed that again. A couple of years ago, though, I sort of felt like I was going to retire and go and live at the beach, which I do. I live at the beach. I live in the Coromandel in New Zealand, for anyone that's listening that knows that. And it's very beautiful. And so I'd like to call that rewiring. So I haven't been traveling for coaching coach training the last couple of years. I've been doing mainly mentoring or working with just a handful of client firms that I've enjoyed working with over the years. But I guess prior to that, most of the 15 years, say 2004 right through to 2018, most of my work was training coaching skills. And I was really lucky to see the world doing that. Because I became an MCC quite early on and I had good coach training skills, the markets that were just gaining momentum in coaching, like India and China, welcomed me, and I'm so grateful to come and work with their leaders that wanted to become coaches. So that's been an amazing journey. And I know that's such an overdone word, but it is a continuum. And when you think that we've known each other 16 years and what has changed so much for both of us over that period of time. And I have to acknowledge you are the perfect coaching client who is willing to build their self-awareness. And, you know, that's got to have a lot to do with your success. So
thank you.
And it's always, and I guess most of my clients are like that too. And it's just, it gives you such energy, me as a coach, such energy to work with people. So
that's
thank
great.
you for having me.
It's my pleasure. So, Linley, you're working with leaders and high achievers. And I'm interested with the word high achievers. So What's your definition of it?
Yes. So my definition, or it could be what are high achiever characteristics, or it could be what does an organization term a high achiever. So there's so many ways of thinking about, a high achiever. We'll all have our own definitions. But I guess for me, it's someone that can become a bit of a role model, someone who is really competent, who is confident and is committed. And I guess if they're competent, they have the skills for the job, or the education or the training or the background. They have the skills to do the job that they're in. Confident, that someone who's articulate, who's really happy to help others, that confidence. So they're not holding on tightly to a position and in fear of someone else being competitive with them, and committed to the overall big picture, the overall good. I guess that's, for me, is what makes a high achiever. And they're forward focused.
Yeah. So about high achievers, and some people also talk about elite. Do you think that there is a difference between being a high achiever and an elite person?
Well, I guess if you think about it from a say a sports perspective, I don't think there is much difference, really. It's just the level that you achieve and the focus, the amount of focus that goes into taking yourself forward, and being, I guess, the person who is going to make a difference to that organisation, or to that organisation, whether that be their professional organisation, or whether that be some other type of organisation that they might be involved in, a community organisation or a not-for-profit.
So you talk about those high achievers as being, role model, committed, confident. So that's the good bit, isn't it? I mean, that's we're all wanting to be that. But what's in the way for them? What's in the way? What are the barriers for those high achievers?
Well, a lot of them, I find, and there's a bit of a pattern, what gets in the way is they work too hard.
Okay.
And so they don't come up for air. They don't have enough balance. They don't have enough time to just to think, because they're doing all the time. They're in that doing, rather than that vision work with an organisation, because they're the ones that are going to get things done, and they're driving themselves and other people a lot of the time. So, and I think that's something that we've talked about over the years.
Yes.
Taking that time to reflect. I think that's what's missing for a lot of high achievers, reflection time. And they just, and many get too tired.
Because of the lack of balance. I mean, is it because they are constantly unsatisfied by wanting more, and therefore they are driven by always wanting to do better? I mean, I remember vividly, actually, a conversation between you and I when I was a head teacher, and when it would come to August, because August in England is the moment when we get the results, GCSE and A-level. And I remember that I would not sleep the night before. A week before that, I would start to feel, actually, probably the anxiety and the worries. And the night before, I would not sleep. And it was also about me being unable to calm myself down because I was setting myself so high expectations of myself. So and at that point, I wasn't really working. I mean, it was part of the holiday to some extent. So I wasn't doing, but in my mind, I had set some really high expectations with numbers. And I remember you asking me about what success looked like for me. And at that point, I said, oh, well, Lindy, it's got to be 80, it's got to be 90. It's all about numbers. And now I look back at that question and I'm thinking, probably at that time, it was very right for me to answer that. But now with time, actually, I would answer a very different response because being a high achiever and having goals that are, like the Kilimanjaro to climb, and sometimes, it looks like impossible, isn't always about what we need to achieve ourselves. There are things within ourselves that we can achieve. And one of them, for example, can be calmness. Not always wanting to know more, but actually being quite calm and happy with what you have. Because by being a high achiever and always wanting more and always wanting to achieve high, then you forget the present moment.
And I think, it's fine if you love your work and to be completely focused on work and not have very much space for other things in your life. There is a period in your life where that's great and that works well. And I think, what is missing for those people is the balance that I talk about is the reflection about their work and how they are identifying, success, for example, or what meaning are they giving to all of the things, and is there another perspective that they're missing out on? And I think, high achievers are the people who benefit most from coaching because they're already willing to put themselves at risk or to work hard. So they're already willing to be open and look at how they're seeing things.
And to some extent, the coaching session, when you're a high achiever, is giving you a moment to reflect, isn't it?
Absolutely. That's the space that you're in. Yeah.
And what would be your advice then? Because I used to love our session, and I've actually got a whole file of notes of our sessions, which maybe one day I'll publish. But what's your advice for high achievers who can't have coaching all the time because it's a financial commitment as well, but who want to keep reflecting? What are the habits that they need to bring in to keep that reflective mode going, and not only when Linley or Nadine are talking to them?
Well, one of the biggest habits, I think, is don't keep shifting your appointment with your coach. Show up, make that a priority in your day, because that's giving you space for yourself. And so many coaches talk to me about how their clients, they have to be really flexible for their clients because their clients are in demand here and there and traveling and doing things. And so, if you're a high achiever, be proactive about if you really if you really need to change your appointment with your coach, you be proactive about it instead of your coach having to chase you up, and make it something really important and something to treasure as part of your own professional development and part of how you work at your best.
Do you think that reflecting is sufficient only when we talk, or are you encouraging those achievers to also write down their reflection?
Well, it depends what works for people. You know, writing down does work for some people and for others it doesn't, you know. So finding the style that works best for you. And I guess reflecting, and it's okay to reflect, but what are you going to do with that reflection? And I guess that's what the coach is really part of your life for, sitting on your shoulder. So what does that mean? And what difference will it make to the way you approach your work tomorrow? How willing are you to make that change? And, you know, how will it grow you as a person? Because we're all on a growth journey. I mean, you know, I've been out with some 80-year-olds tonight who are still absolutely passionate about learning.
That's good. That's good. Linley, you're saying that your clients are looking for clarity, they're looking for focus, confidence, and you mentioned correctness. How do you measure the impact of coaching on those?
Yeah. Well, I guess some of it is about job satisfaction. How do they report their job satisfaction as we're going through a 6 or 1 year, you know, working together? What do their 360 surveys say, you know, from 2 years ago to this year? What do the culture surveys say within their organisation? Have they had a new job offered to them internally? Have they applied and got a new job externally? Have they been offered a promotion or more experience, you know, internally? So those are all of the ways that I might think, okay, yes, they're developing, they're growing, they're learning, and just their own feedback. You know, I've got way more confidence than I used to have. I'm able to focus. I know where I'm going now. You know, it's all of those sort of statements that you will hear from your clients. Because you're right, and they're just words, aren't they?
Yeah, well, yeah. What do you do as a coach when you listen to your client say, yes, I'm more confident and, you know, I'm clear in my head about where I'm going, where I'm taking the organization. So what do you do with those clients when actually you as a coach, you're not convinced that that's the case? You know, you don't think that they are telling you enough for you to think, okay, yeah, they've grown. What do you do as a coach?
I guess you trust what you're hearing.
Yeah.
And keep asking questions like, well, how is that showing up? And what does someone else say? What does the board say? What does your boss say? What does, you know, what are they noticing about you? What feedback are they giving you? Because if you genuinely are more confident or more clear or more focused or whatever, someone is going to notice and someone is going to say something, especially if they know that you're in a coaching program. And you may well be on a leadership program and coaching is just part of that. So someone is going to notice. So keep asking them.
I love that. And I should share with you that we've got Gemma Stowe, who is listening to us. She's just said hello. And Gemma is a great coach. She works on making women more visible in organizations. And Gemma, if you've got any question to ask Linley, please free to post something and we will go through your questions. So Linley, you know that I am particularly interested in conflict and difficult conversations. What are the type of conflicts that coaching are reducing? Because you're also mentioning that on your website and when you talk you talk a lot about the impact of coaching, and one of them being, it's reducing conflict. But what types of conflict is it reducing?
Gosh, and I know you're doing so much work in that area. I'd love to ask you that question. So, I guess the types of internal conflict. They're, helping people think more clearly for themselves. But a lot of the conflicts that people get concerned about are that what we might call personality conflicts with peers and colleagues, and they're the early on ones in the career to solve, to get a handle on, I guess. And after that, it's values and ethics that are the things that concern people, and change. The conflict of dealing with change, especially if you're in a frontline role where you're implementing change and working with people in very challenging situations. What would you add to that? What do you find?
I find the same as you. I guess I'm interested in the proportion of is there more internal conflict when you're a high achiever than external conflict? And I'd say that as a high achiever, you're probably asking yourself a lot of questions. So you're in conflict with yourself because you don't know the answer. You're doubting a lot. You've got some self-belief. Despite the fact that you may have a track record in your career, you don't know if you're going to be able to do that specific thing that you want to do. So you're in conflict with yourself because you've got some self-doubt.
Yeah, that's what I mean about those internal conflicts, questioning yourself when, and that's another thing, that is common conversation in the coaching sessions is that doubting yourself or second guessing yourself or, that whole self-belief, backing yourself is, I guess, what I call it. And it takes time for people to come to really understanding what it means to back themselves, and that it doesn't need to be about I. It backing yourself can be just a quiet confidence, a quiet serenity about.
It's quite a shift, isn't it, for when you've got your own internal conflict of having some self-belief that even if your track record show you can do it, actually, there is that little voice that tells you the what if, what if happen, and then you get quite anxious and worried about things, and it's quite difficult to unstuck yourself from those thoughts when you're on your own, and therefore, yes.
And it's also training yourself to question the what if.
Yes.
Does there have to be a what if? How much energy am I using on thinking about what if instead of being in the present moment? Really.
Yes.
And so being present
can be exhausting. It can be exhausting to do that.
Absolutely. And that's why, so many high achievers are tired a lot of the time, because they do too much and too much thinking rather than, that isn't directed that well early in their career.
Yes. Gemma is just making a comment. She says, it happens so much. I see it with my clients. Undervaluing and convincing yourself you're not good enough or don't have enough experience. Owning your experience can be subtle yet really strong.
Yes, and our all our systems are set up to perpetuate that I'm not good enough because, you're told to strive more,
Yes.
to do more, to get that recognition, etc. You need all of this on your CV before you can do that. And so, it's a bit of a trap and perpetuated by the system that we've allowed organisations to develop as. And that will shift and change because, we're going into a new, organisations are progressing themselves.
But it's quite challenging in a way to be a high achiever, because there is the pressure that one puts on himself. And then there is everything else that you have to manage, people.
That's right. And it's not just work. It's not just people at work that you have to manage. It's your own family who, are really so proud of you and talking about you to the rest of the family or whoever it might be around you. It's keeping up that appearance and keeping up that strength for everybody. And it's a bit tough sometimes.
Do you think high achievers wear a mask?
Oh, I think there's quite a lot of self-protection. Yeah. And, that's a way to survive. It's not necessarily a way to thrive. But it's what you might do while you're learning other techniques that will help you thrive and help you be more confident, in who you really are and what you bring and that belief in yourself. But we all topple from time to time. Yeah. It's just how quickly do we get back up?
Yeah. And I guess, coaching can bring you a safe environment in which you can take off your mask and be who you truly are. Coaching sessions aren't always smooth, are there?
No, they're not. And often it takes some time for the high achiever or the leader or whoever is in the coachee seat to take off that mask and really trust the coach enough to be real. Even though they might have a good relationship, it does take time to develop that depth of trust that allows the coachee to be vulnerable.
Yes.
Because it is a vulnerable space.
Yes, and this means that sometimes we may have clients who actually cry.
Absolutely.
And how do you deal with the experience that you have, Linley? How do you deal with a client who comes on a call and things are okay at the beginning, but that things kind of are bubbling and you are probing, and that client starts to cry? How do you deal with it, particularly when you're working on Zoom and remotely? How do you deal with that?
Well, it's different with everyone, isn't it? I guess, and I think this is a great reason for coaches to always be in professional development and talking with colleagues, etc., because discussing these sorts of things. So, you might look at the ethics. You might look at for answers and you might listen to other people. But I guess it's really the most important thing is not interfering with that client's process and just being there unconditionally for them, for what they need at that point in time. And just because it can be so individual, but that would be my overarching.
And when you say
to be aware of.
about professional development, which we do because we're part of ICF,
Yeah.
but we also have supervisor, mentor
Yes.
with whom
Yes.
we can talk.
Yeah.
And certainly for me, during COVID, some themes have changed with my clients. We don't quite talk about the same thing as before, or with, emotions are very high. Leaders are very vulnerable at the moment. And I mean, I guess for me, having a mentor, supervisor has been quite key because I've not necessarily been trained to discuss some topics.
Yeah.
I mean, when you are a lot more experienced than me, Linley, but you have a mentor, with whom do you go to when you want to make sure that actually ethically you're still
Yes, that's right.
an ethical coach?
Well, I belong to a group that meets to discuss ethics, but I have had a formerly trained supervisor from time to time, but because I'm working a lot less now, I tend to reach out, keep regular contact, and with a couple of other MCCs that are still working, and whom we trust each other, and we can really question how are we developing as coaches, what are we doing in our practice, what's going well. So the sort of things that you would talk with the supervisor. And I did belong to for several years in Auckland, they were really great peer supervision groups where 4 or 5 of you, and we followed quite a strict structure and supported each other. And those people have become, very close, in your inner circle of your coaching colleagues. Yeah.
You are a certified facilitator for a number of tools. So working style analysis. How do you use those tools, and how reliable are those? And the question why I'm asking, Nene, is I think it was last year I put a post on LinkedIn, and it got a lot of comments, and people were quite anti those tools. And I was quite surprised actually by how many anti facilitating tools. I was quite surprised by the reaction of people. So how do you use them, and how reliable are they for you as an experienced coach?
Okay. So I'm going to be one of those people that don't use those tools anymore.
Okay.
I have. And actually, I think, in fact, that most of the well-known tools are pretty reliable. And different tools have different uses for people, and depending on their stage of development. So I do think it's a great thing for coaches to have a certification, or certainly a good knowledge of a range of tools. And certainly if you're working with leaders that are within a leadership program, the leadership program will use tools. 100% they will use tools. So working with those, but I guess I've seen people seen clients, but these are more junior leaders, become quite fixated on what type they are.
Yeah.
And that becomes their identity, and they get stuck on that instead of thinking, well, I can be who I choose to be. So that's, But, I have another friend who has trained as a coach, an ex-client who has trained as a coach, and she has been in recruitment, and she uses DISC and has a huge amount of success with placing people into jobs after they've done their DISC profiles, because they understand themselves better. They know what they're looking for. So, yeah, you can make them work for people. And if it's giving people confidence and moving them forward, I think they're a wonderful way of learning much more about yourself.
Yeah. I guess what I would say is, and when I had, those comments on LinkedIn, I guess what I would say is that it's a snapshot at a time when you do those tests, okay? And it doesn't mean that forever you're like that, but at that particular time, that's who you are. But it's not necessarily who you want to be.
That's right, because, life changes for people. I can talk about, if we've got a moment,
we do.
The values in action, the VIA. I can't, the word's not coming to me. But anyway, I first did that profile, I think, in about 2007. And then I did a course with Ryan Nemec out of the States to be able to facilitate that a bit better and to learn more about the VIA classification. And so I redid the survey in about 2014, 2015. And basically, I think 2 of the top 5 had shifted, but they were still within the top 10. So it was pretty much the same. And so he interviewed me about what had changed in my life to shift those around a little bit.
Yes.
And there were some major things that had happened to me, like having cancer and coming through the other side of that, and etc., and changing the way I was working in my business because of that. So there are, while it might stay similar, you do change a bit. Yeah.
I agree. And I like what you said. I can be who I choose to be. I think that could make such a good blog, Linley. I'm keeping a note of that. So, Linley, high achievers, no doubt, have been challenged by COVID like everybody else.
Yes.
How can coaching help them?
I guess different conversations about slightly different things now, because their usual basis of decision making is gone in the interim and maybe forever. So there's a lot more shorter term thinking, and I think there's helping them work with more, having conversations about how to work with more emotional impacts that are happening for people. Lots of sadness is bubbling up for people. Lots of stress is bubbling up for people, not necessarily this leader, but maybe the people that they're working with. And of course, people having to adapt to a whole new way of working from home. And I guess trust is a big thing that's come up since COVID. What I'm hearing from people are feeling a bit more unsettled, and so trust within the organisation, within their teams. And I think I would encourage leaders to just slow down a bit to notice the changes, because the changes are different when you're meeting on Zoom all the time and you haven't got the same resources and you can't offer the same resources as you used to have. And so slowing down to notice, and a much stronger focus on connecting people together somehow.
It's quite virtual world. Yeah, it's quite challenging, isn't it? Because at the moment we're both working with leaders who have their agenda absolutely packed with meetings from very early on. I mean, they're not commuting anymore at the moment, so they've replaced the commute with extra meetings. they're doing a very, very long day, which is back-to-back meeting. It's quite challenging, isn't it, to step back and be a high achiever for 12 hours.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess I did write down, helping our leaders now to be in the moment and re-identify what does now mean.
Yes.
Just those sorts of conversations. What does trust? What do emotions mean? How did they show up 2 years ago in your organization? How are they showing up now? Are people talking about them more? Do we have to change the types of conversations we're having with each other? Support, those connection support. Are they words that we're using more often in normal conversations?
I'm becoming very aware in my conversations with clients that because things are changing so much at the moment in organizations and people are moving between organizations, people are leaving. You mentioned sadness. There is a sense of grief as well at the moment where people only realize how much they enjoyed working with a person once they've left.
Yes.
Because you take it for granted that people are there every day. And suddenly you realize you've got a new N+1 or a new N+2, which is, potentially really nice and pleasure to work with. But actually they're grieving the former relationship with their former N+1. They've not had the time to say goodbye. They've not had them face to face. And grief is quite is very difficult to deal with at the moment as leaders.
I think it's and I guess it's something that we've got top of mind in New Zealand because our Prime Minister has spoken about it a lot, about be kind, being kind to yourself and to others around you. And I think that's becoming a bit of a mainstream way of being or mantra to have at work now, which is great. And it will help people. It will support people.
Yeah. Nicola, a comment. I know Nicola quite well. We've done some work in the Middle East together. And Nicola is saying, really interesting conversation, Nadine. So Nicola, if you've got any questions, you can still ask your question. Nimni, you talk about kindness. It's interesting you talk about kindness because yesterday I did a LinkedIn Live with some peers of mine, and we did mention kindness and being kind to ourselves. How can you become kind to yourself when everything around you is changing and moving fast and shifting fast and you've got no control? So what would be your advice? How can you become kind with yourself? What would be what we can do to develop that?
Well, I guess that's going to be different for everyone as well. But I guess having a conversation with your clients about what does it feel like if you use the words, oh, I'm being kind to myself, what's the thing that you would be doing? And finding a way to have more of that right now, making space for the things that you identify that, yes, I'm being kind to myself today. So just making space.
Yeah. On the 20th of January on LinkedIn Live, I'm going to be doing a LinkedIn Live with some peers on kindness, actually, because that day is my birthday, and I thought I need a theme that is really important for me, and kindness is really important. I'm wondering, am I kind enough? And how can I be kinder?
And how do you show kindness? Yes, how do you show kindness? Yeah, absolutely. That's and what would kind look like in your team, and what would
And particularly when you don't see people face to face,
Yeah.
You know, how can I be kind on Zoom?
Yes. Yeah. Is it that little chat that you send, or is it the message you send afterwards, or what is it? Is it just,
And even in the non-verbal, are there is there something in my non-verbal communication that would transmit kindness? You know? I just find that fascinating.
Yeah, it is. It's a really lovely, big, juicy inquiry, isn't it?
It is. Nicola just said something. She said, high performers in remote learning is an interesting consideration. This is a time when to be kind has not as much. This is a time when the be kind has not as much priority, as often resources have been reduced and the demand is still there. How do you identify those who need to focus on themselves through a virtual approach rather than the subtle gestures you pick up face to face?
That's a good question, isn't it? That could be part of your inquiry on your kindness session. Yeah. Yes, and I guess some organisations might want to ask, you know, their leaders might want to ask that question and play around with that.
Do you remember you helped me shape my weekly one-to-one with my senior leadership team? Do you remember? Because I was meeting them on a one-to-one and as a team, but on a one-to-one, and I really wanted to get the best out of them. And we looked at my questioning techniques. So if we were going to perhaps shift people's mind in their one-to-one, you know, what are the questions I can ask to be a better leader? You know, what questions could we ask about this kindness as part of our one-to-one?
I guess you could ask things like, you know, have you experienced kindness at work, and who from, what does that look like, what's the impact it has on you, how, if you've received kindness, what kindness have you given? I guess it's all of those sorts of things, isn't it, that will help people to have a conversation or have a focus on kindness. Yeah.
Wouldn't it be lovely if people in their one-to-one systematically could ask about kindness? I mean, even if, you know, we need to talk about performance, but to talk about kindness, to take a moment to step back and talk about it, wouldn't it be great?
Well, I think in New Zealand it could be quite easy because that has been such a big thing for us as a country in the last nearly a year now. But I think, you know, lots and lots of one-to-ones are what's gone really well for you this week or this month. What are you celebrating? You know, as a leader, you're asking your report, you know, what are you celebrating this month? So it's hard, it's not a very big shift. If you're already asking those sorts of questions, you could have that focus if it was something that you wanted to encourage.
And it's a mindset, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a belief that you have, oh, no, that's too hard. Kindness, no.
Yes.
I'll go there.
Yes. Yes.
Kindness is when I've got my cat on my knee.
Yes. Linnae, we've been on air for the past 50 minutes. Is there, which is great, you know, is there anything that you'd like to say or share with, I think it's 706 million users of LinkedIn, right?
Gosh. Gosh, no, look, it's been, well, it's been thought-provoking. I guess, and I will go away and reflect on some of the things that we've been talking about, and I do in conversations with people to have them have a better experience in their lives. So
could you, Linné, you just froze when you were speaking. Could you just say that again? Because
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so when it's been a really interesting conversation, and quite a lot of things have bubbled away for me, and I think when I leave here I will reflect on what conversations can I have, or what conversations am I not having with people that I could be having with people that would give them a better experience of their life right now.
Oh, I love that. I love that, Linné. Nicola has just said, informal kindness has significant impact rather than formalized meetings, which raise it.
Maybe, yeah.
I think in an ideal world, formal and informal is ideal. You know, it's a balance of both, because you can't always be informal at work. You have to be formal. So thank you very much, Nicola, for your feedback on that. Linné, it's been an absolute pleasure to have 50 minutes of you.
Great fun. We haven't done this for ages.
Really enjoyed that. And you're very welcome to come back on my LinkedIn Live at any time to have a
I don't like these late nights, Nadine.
Thank you so much, Linné, for taking the time to be on air with me. And I hope to talk again with you soon. Thank you, Linné.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.